Hello and welcome to the in-new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Divedi, and in this segment today we are going to talk about global minimum tax. This topic is important from the perspective of prelims and also from the perspective of GS mains paper. So let's begin with the topics of discussion that we are going to look at step by step. First of all, we will talk about the news. Then we will discuss the highlights of the announcement. We will also talk about global minimum tax. We will talk about India's stand on it and also the impacts of it, as well as the conclusion. And in the last of the segment, I am going to offer you a mains-based question for answer writing practice. So let's begin with why is it in the news. So 130 countries, they have joined a US-backed global minimum tax of 15% in order to prevent multinational companies which are working on an online platform in order to prevent them to dodge the taxes. How is it possible? We will discuss that in detail. So, first let's look at the highlights. Highlights step by step. First highlight is the aim, if we talk about, it is to address challenges presented by a globalized and increasingly digital world economy in which profits can be relocated across borders and companies can earn online profits in places where they have no taxable headquarters. So, in order to understand the aim of it, I'm just going to give you an example. Look at this particular diagram, whichever I'm going to make. First, this is a country A and this is a country B. Country A and country B, these are having certain taxable and non-taxable procedures. Suppose country A has a 10% of tax, whereas country B has negligible or no tax at all. Negligible, suppose 2%. And a company is there such as Amazon. Amazon is earning its revenue by generating profit from country A by having a huge consumer base here. But in order to prevent itself from paying a taxation of 10%, it has its headquarters in country B, which has a taxation of 2% only. Now, country A will be unable to charge any sort of tax from Amazon because the headquarters of Amazon is not in country A but in country B. With the help of global minimum corporate tax, what will happen? There will be a uniform tax rate under which country A and country B both will have a 15% of taxation rate. Now what will happen? Now country A can reap the benefits of the revenue generated by Amazon by taxing at this particular rate. Alright, I hope you understood it. Moving on to the next point. The deal calls for a global minimum tax of at least 15%. This is the minimum tax. And there are still technical details which will need to be worked out, and it would be at least 2023 before the agreement takes effect. So, this announcement has been made by OECD, and OECD has said that there are certain technicalities which need to be worked out, and this month only, in the next session, G20 will also look at it. And moving on, let's look at this. Under the deal, countries could tax their companies' foreign earnings up to 15% if they go untaxed through subsidiaries in other countries. That would remove the incentive to use accounting and legal schemes to shift profit to low-rate countries where they do little or no business, since the profits would be taxed at home anyway. I have already made you understand this. So Joe Biden wants to increase its revenue for clean energy and boosting infrastructure. That is why this administration is striving for a minimum corporate tax. Certain countries are there, such as France, that are already levying a digital service tax. We have also covered about digital service tax, of which the link will be in the description box if you want to look at it. So, see. The next highlight, signers included Bermuda and Cayman Islands, regarded by economists as tax havens, and major economic powers China and India. More discussion is expected at the meeting of G20 finance ministers in Venice next week, ahead of the final endorsement by the full G20 summit of countries leaders in October. So, Bermuda and Cayman Islands, they are regarded as tax haven. What is a tax haven basically? Tax haven is a region where there is no tax or low tax. That is why the earlier example I gave you, country B, there was a tax haven, right? Moving on, let's look at this particular diagram. I did talk about the digital tax of France, but now when the minimum corporate tax will be there, the global corporate tax, France will withdraw this levy of 3%. This is also known as the GAFA tax, right? And many a times GAFA, if we talk about GAFA, is the acronym for Google, Amazon, Facebook and Apple. So this tax was charged by France at a 3% and this was on revenues in France. Now these particular platforms are American based companies. So there were many strained relations. There were many strained exchange of words when they used to talk about this taxation. But now after this, they will withdraw this tax and France has welcomed this effort from the Biden administration. And this map will also show you the digital service tax in Europe. Now as you can see, in EU, the pink region shows implementation of digital service tax. When so big trading regions such as France and European Union, they are implementing taxation, digital service taxation. That means digital economy is it's growing effortlessly now. And the taxation which arisen due to the revenues which arisen due to intellectual property rights, India was losing a big chunk of it. If we talk about the data, according to OECD, the taxable revenue was lost from $100 billion to $240 billion. In India only, on an annual basis, if we talk about, there was a loss of $10 billion US annually because it couldn't tax the digital services provided by the different online platforms. Moving on, let's look at the global minimum tax. Now G7, the group of 7, also pushed for a minimum global corporation tax of at least 15%. But you have to keep in mind, only 130 countries out of 139 countries have agreed to it. For example, Ireland hasn't agreed to it because it says it doesn't agree upon the 15% tax. There is a reservation about it. And put in place measures to ensure taxes were paid in the countries where businesses operate. What is corporation tax? It's a direct tax imposed on the net income or profit that enterprises make from their businesses. Applicability, it would apply to companies' overseas profits. Therefore, if countries agree on a global minimum, governments could still set whatever local corporate tax rate they want. But if companies pay lower tax in a particular country, their home governments could top up their taxes to agreed minimum rate, eliminating the advantage of shifting profits to a tax haven. What is the need? What is the need of GMCTR, Global Minimum Corporate Tax Rate? Reduce tax laws. As I have already told you that there were so many tax losses which were wreaking havoc on the income of countries such as India. This would reduce tax loss as our economy is going to be a digital economy very soon, and COVID-19 has of course propelled every economy to become a digital economy as soon as possible, including India. So this would have a positive impact on India. Also to bring uniformity. Now, in order to attract investments from different multinational corporations, suppose there are many countries, they would offer the lowest of the lowest tax rate to different MNCs for them to invest in their country. But now, if there will be a 15% uniform tax rate, this would of course bring uniformity and fair play. Moving on, look at the next headline. Now, this was a recent news where US set and then it suspended tariffs on India and 5 others over digital taxes. So India did put digital tax on many companies from America. But what happened? It retaliated after that. Retaliated in the sense it had already put tariffs in retaliation, but then it suspended it. Similar thing was happening to France as well. When it put the GAFA tax, US also retaliated. So now impacts and India's stand. India's stand is of course going to be positive here, because of course it wasn't putting as much as tax as it should have or it could have, but now the impact will be positive and India has welcomed this initiative. So if we talk about the impacts, India is likely to benefit from the global minimum 15% corporate tax rate pact, as the effective domestic tax rate is above the threshold and the country would continue to attract investments. Now you must be thinking that why India is going to continue attract investments if the domestic tax rate is higher than global minimum corporate tax. That is in the sense, why is India going to be positive about it? Of course, if India has a proper structured uniform tax rate which is much lower than the domestic rates, more and more MNCs would try to make India its manufacturing hub. So that is why in absolute terms, India will be in a win-win situation. Also, in September 2019, the government had reduced the corporate tax rate to 22% for companies that gave up all exemptions and incentives. Further, a 15% rate was offered to new manufacturing firms. The effective tax rate, inclusive of surcharge and cess, for Indian domestic companies is around 25.17%. Tax experts, they have said that voluntary approach could work if adopted by countries where many multinationals have their headquarters, such as the US and Europe, by making clear to companies that even if they avoid tax by moving profits to overseas subsidiaries, those profits will be taxed at home up to the minimum. Moving to the conclusion, there is a boost to the digital economy by this initiative, as COVID-19 has propelled each and every country to become more and more digitized. That is why it is necessary to tax, because revenue is being generated. And if the countries from where the revenue is being generated, they won't get the benefit of it, digital economy will be a far-fetched dream. So, for countries such as India, it will give boost to digital economy. Moving on to the next one, checking digital imperialism and monopoly. Digital imperialism in the sense if some countries are going to have a colony of so many MNCs, what would happen? Those countries will continue to garner the support of those MNCs and continue to garner the benefits of it. So, it will give an impetus to globalized digitization and have a check upon monopolization by the digital companies. So, I hope you understood this. Moving on to the question. Explain the advantages of global minimum tax in 250 words. So, that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.